Here now to discuss these latest fiscal numbers and the true state of our economy. He's a CPA, an economist, and a good friend of the show. He's America's economist, our buddy Dan Geltrude. Dan, how about it? GDP's up. That's great. However, that doesn't paint the whole picture of the U.S. economy and how American families are faring today. So would you agree with this White House and the regime and say, things are looking rosy and great, everything's great, and then would you lie blame on the Republicans for higher gas prices?
No, I wouldn't. So let me tell you how I see things. So let's start with the GDP. So when we're talking about gross domestic product and that going up, as you said, that's a positive. Let's look at what's been going on behind the scenes. Actually, not behind the scenes. The Federal Reserve continues to raise interest rates. Why are they doing that? It's because they want to kill demand, right? They don't want the economy to be moving at a brisk pace. Why? Because we don't have enough supply. Broken supply chains. Yep. Why? Well, we could talk about that another time, right? So you're out of whack between supply and demand. How about this? If you want to bring that in line, let's bring up supply as opposed to killing demand. Because when you kill demand, Dan, what happens is that means you're going to lower production because people aren't going to buy stuff. So this gross domestic product number, all I could tell you is let's sit back for another quarter or two and see where that goes before we start celebrating, because that is a very, very short-term outlook of what's going on with U.S. production.
Yeah, because let's be real, okay? And I'll throw myself and fellow Americans under the bus. We love our stuff in this country. And so in 22, I think people were feeling a sigh of relief from the 2 years of BS, meaning COVID, 2020 and 21. So in 22, people went out and spent, but they put it on credit cards. They don't have a disposable income anymore, and they're bleeding through their savings. That's going to all dry up in 23 now that we're in it, and that's why I agree with you. Moving forward, how can the GDP continue to go up if we're not out there spending anymore? And we won't be, because we don't have the savings, we don't have the disposable income. The numbers from 22 proved it. Correct?
Yes, they did. And let's talk about another thing, too. Let's talk about jobs. Yeah. Let's talk about the unemployment rate, right? Because that's another thing that kind of gets twisted around. So when we look at the unemployment numbers, they've been low. Hey, that's great. But I'm not exactly sure how they're calculating it. And let me tell you why. You see thousands upon thousands of jobs being cut. And it started with big tech. And people say, oh, that's big tech. Well, how do you explain then when 3M and some of these other companies now beyond big tech are now having these layoffs, right? This is all related to a slowing economy when companies are cutting back. Now, they can point to say, well, we have so many job openings still, almost 10 million. So the labor market is tight. Dan, you have to look at where these jobs are. Where are those job openings? You're losing jobs in big tech. That's bad. Those are higher paying jobs. And the jobs that are opening, not that there's anything wrong with them, but a lot of them are in places like the fast food restaurants. Those jobs don't pay the same.
Right.
So
service industry jobs.
It's not out.
Right. It's not well paying with great benefit jobs making 50, 60, 100 grand. It's a fast food job with barely any benefits. Exactly. And can we talk about jobs for a minute? Because this regime, Dan, keeps bragging they've created these tens of millions of jobs. How many were idle because of COVID that just came back online in 22 and now going into 23 and part of 21 under Joe Biden that were pulled before that? These aren't created jobs. These were idled positions that came back online that he's patting himself on the back for. Am I correct in that or not?
Yes, you are. That's exactly it. So when they're talking about job creation, it's not job creation at all. It's just job replacement.
Thank you.
These are jobs that had existed, and now they're just, as you said, coming back online. So that's another point that's quite misleading to say, I created all these new jobs. And no, you didn't. The pandemic is now passing, and these jobs are simply coming back. It's that simple.
And the final one to you, Dan, is the federal government and their bloated spending. when we spend money we don't have, when we're printing it like it grows on trees, that's driving this now. Well, we're in 2023, so when you stop saying 40, it's now 41 year high inflation, correct?
Yes, it is. And you want to know something? Think about this. We're at $31.4 trillion of debt, and our credit line has just ran out. So now what are we going to be talking about for the next 6 months? We're going to be bickering back and forth, but I'm going to tell you the outcome. They're going to raise the debt ceiling, and we're going to continue to spend more and more and more. I don't know when it is, Dan, but at some point, we are truly going to hit the ceiling where there's nowhere to go.
Which, unfortunately, Dan, means a recession. Nobody wants to say the dirty R word, but it's most likely coming in 23 because of this ridiculous spending, the supply chain issues, and Americans being out of cash, plain and simple. Dan Geltrude, thank you always for your honesty and a true picture of the state of our economy, which leads me to tell everybody out there, save up, folks, for that rainy day. It's coming. Thank you, Dan. Have a good weekend.
Thanks, Dan.
Yep.